I've just finished quilting this Kristen quilt. This is my Rifle Paper Co. one. I quilted it with this serpentine stitch, just one direction. These are about, an inch and a half-ish apart. It's hard to tell because they're wavy. Something like that. I just kind of eyeballed how far apart I wanted them. So when I'm trimming a quilt that has borders, instead of using the edge of the quilt for trimming, I like to use the actual seam from the borders. And that's going to usually be a little bit more square than the actual edge of the quilt, since this can get a little wonky when you're quilting. So in theory, this should be 2¼ inches from this seam to the edge. If it got a little wonky, it may not be totally 2¼ So I'm going to probably trim it to about 2⅛ inch. You can do whatever works for you, and if you find that some parts of the quilt don't have enough, you can go back and trim it a little bit more. It's just taking a tiny bit off, but it's going to make sure that my edges are square and even. You can see how I have this lined up right here at 2⅛ right here, and I don't have it the exact same amount all the way along the edge here. So I have a little bit more over here, a little bit less over here. This will help even that out so that your quilt has a more square finish. So first I'm going to trim the corners. I usually leave a lot of extra batting around the edge just for safety. I don't know. It's okay if you don't. So there's my first corner. I'm going to go on to the next corner. It's right here. I'm going to make sure everything is smooth. I'm going to do the same thing with 2⅛, or whatever size works for your quilt. So you can see here that parts of it have a little bit more that's getting trimmed and parts have a little bit less. That's why I do it this way. So I'm going to trim that side and then the top. Giant ruler. If you don't have a ruler that's this big, that's okay. Use whatever size ruler you have. I like to use a square ruler, but if you don't have one, that's okay. This is a 16½ inches square. Really like this size. It's big, but it's not cumbersome and hard to manage. So this corner is a little wonkier than the other corners, which is fine. Pretty good. Okay, definitely make sure there's no quilt folded under there, because if you cut it, you're going to cry some tears. So do not do that. Okay, now that I have the corners cut, I'm going to connect the corners using a long straight ruler. So I have this 8½ by 24½ inch ruler, which I love and use all the time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have this flat edge right here, and then I also have my seam edge here that I was using 2⅛ inch from that to measure. So I can use the combination of this straight edge here and this 2⅛ inch measurement to trim my quilt. So I want to get it lined up here so that this transition is smooth. And now I have my edge here and this edge here. So I have 3 things I can line up. So I want to make sure this and this will be the most important 2 things to line up, and then 2⅛ here. It should be a straight line-ish. So I'm going to use this edge. I'm going to line up 2⅛. Make sure this is straight. This is hanging off the edge of a table. You want to make sure it's not getting pulled down, or you're going to end up with something wonky. Okay, that looks pretty good. Make sure nothing is folded under where you're going to cut. A little bit of batting showing here. I think I just didn't cut that straight. 2 more sides. All right, I'm going to connect these two straight parts I've already cut. Right, there we go. Got a trimmed quilt.